Good evening, everybody. Parents, thank you so much for joining us. Abby Childers is the chair for the CMS Exceptional Children Parents Advisory Council, and along with myself and Betsy Springer, we're on here tonight just to sort of get this conversation going with all of you guys out there who are having questions about how your children are affected by this whole COVID thing. It's something we've never had to deal with. It's unprecedented circumstances, so there's no real roadmap. We haven't done this before, so we don't really know the path we're going down, but I will say that CMS has been working hard to try to figure it out. And I'm the father of 3 children. Our oldest son has Down syndrome, and he goes to Torrance Creek Elementary. And I met Dr. White many years ago and Laura Hamby, and they have been incredible at helping us navigate the school system and get the resources that we need. So it has been an incredible journey so far, and I look forward to this department doing more and growing more and giving more for the children that are out there. So the things to note here tonight is this session's being recorded, so everybody's on mute. You can ask questions using the question or chat feature in there. We're going to get to some of the frequently asked questions as we go through the conversation tonight. And when this is all done, we're going to post this recording on the CMS EC website and the Exceptional Children Parent Advisory Council social media pages. So with that, I kind of want to get started. The agenda for the night is overall an update from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School System EC department and questions from the EC Parent Advisory Council that we've gathered from parents over social media and different relationships that we have with other parents that are in the same boat as that we are. We're going to look at some of the resources for families, and most importantly, if we don't answer your questions, we're going to come back to the questions that you have tonight at the tail end of this thing. So with that, I'll say we're going to throw it over to Dr. White.
Good evening, everybody. We're so glad you're here for the virtual roundtable. Looks like we have lots of parents on the line, and we are so glad you're here. I'm Ann White. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for the EC department, and I am so glad that we're together tonight to talk about the plans for students with disabilities as they access remote learning and service delivery during this health crisis. As you have already heard from Jeremy, this is a collaborative effort of the Parent Advisory Council and members of the EC department, and we have 2 additional special guests. But first, with the Parent Advisory Council, we have Abby Childers, who is our chair, Betsy Springer, co-chair, and you've already met Jeremy, who is a valued member of our Parent Advisory Council. From the department, we have Laura Hamby, who is a director, Stacy Levi, also a director, and Elaine Jones, who is our EC Parent Liaison. We're so glad all of these folks are with us. And in addition, we want to welcome Dr. Matt Hayes in just a minute and Kathy Elling as well. So with that, we're going to get rolling. So I'd like to open us up tonight by calling out the fact that we are in a very scary and difficult situation. And that's the whole reason we're here together tonight. There has already been great loss and tragedy associated with this health crisis. I am sure that none of us expected to be here in this situation, creating plans for educating kids during a pandemic. While all that we're about to share regarding plans and processes and resources is important, it's not nearly as important as the health and safety and welfare of our students and families. If you remember nothing else from this presentation tonight, please remember this picture. Last week, I used this slide to ask EC teachers to focus on their kids, realizing that our students need us now more than ever. Some of our kids don't have technology. Some of their parents, including some of you, may not have transportation to the feeding sites. There might be anxiety, chaos, lost jobs, and even worse than that happening to some of our CMS families during this crisis. We've asked our teachers, first and foremost, to connect with their kids, to show their kids that they miss them, that they care about them. We've asked our teachers to support their students with learning plans that build their curiosity and to transmit positive energy. So I'm going to ask the same thing of you tonight that I asked of our teachers last week. Please listen to all this really important information, but please also hear it in the context of what it takes to support kids and families during a scary, difficult, and possibly a very lonely time. Dr. Hayes, the Deputy Superintendent for Academics, just has a few moments to spend with us tonight before he rejoins the school board meeting. He asked for a few minutes of our time to share with you about the CMS Instructional Continuity Plan and how the EC department was an important partner. Matt, we're so glad you're here tonight.
Thank you. And I don't know if people can see me or just hear me.
I think we could just hear you.
That's perfect. That's much better for everybody. So listen, I just wanted to, this is really for the parents, and just want to thank you guys for joining us this evening. Also want to say a huge thank you to our EC department. It's with pride that I share with each of you that these individuals have been critical to this process since the beginning of the transition into the remote learning. The EC department sat side by side with our curriculum specialists. They created lessons, support processes for both, not just our general ed, but also our special education teachers. They were great advocates for their students, even to the point where they were very diligent in making sure that anything and everything that was part of the decision process was vetted through the state. They got guidance from the state to make sure that when it was time to move to this new opportunity for learning that we're in right now, that they would be able to hold up what the expectation is of you as parents. And I know that this is a phenomenal opportunity for them to share with you more information about that, and also get feedback as well, because this is not what we're designed to do. This type of remote learning is new to all of us, and we just appreciate you being patient, giving us a little bit of grace, and working with us to make sure that we're serving all of our students the proper way. And so thank you very much. And Anne, I appreciate you giving me that opportunity just to say hey, and even more thank you to your team, and also to all of our families out there for supporting us during this time of need.
Thank you, Matt. You've been so supportive of the department and all the kids throughout this whole situation. So thank you so much for dropping in and joining us.
Yes, ma'am.
It is my great pleasure to also welcome Kathy Elling, Chief School Performance Officer and my direct supervisor. Kathy leads the Learning Community Superintendents as well as the Student Services Division, which includes the EC department. She welcomed the opportunity tonight to greet you and share a few thoughts on the CMS efforts to support students during this pandemic. Kathy, we're so glad you're here.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you all for inviting me, and thank you very much, parents and guardians, for joining us this evening. What I would like to share with you is my privilege to work with both the Exceptional Children's family and the school principals and their support staffs, who are working really hard to try to figure out how we can make school feel normal in a very unnormal situation. It is our desire as a team, and when I talk about the team, I want to talk specifically for this minute or two around the psychologists, counselors, social workers, and nurses who are reaching out to our families to check in. We have established a remote plan for our school counselors and psychologists, and they're maintaining some regular contact with families. They are doing both if there were children on their particular caseload that they touch base with, they're still maintaining those contacts with the families and trying to help them troubleshoot things that are happening. What I would say to you as parents and guardians at this point, if you should find that you have concerns about your child's mental health and social emotional well-being during this very challenging time, that you reach out to your child's exceptional children's teacher and general education teacher, and we will ask them, they know to reach out to the support people that they have in the schools to be able to connect you and touch base to make sure that we're providing you with services. This is I want to ask also for a little bit of grace as we try to figure out how to do the work that we know to do face-to-face in this kind of environment. And I know that Anne's team's working really hard to maintain those kinds of touch points with families. I also heard her say that a child's well-being and safety is our primary concern. And that is true whether we're face-to-face instruction or whether we're in this remote learning time. So I want you to know that there's some things that we know to be true that help students at any age. And one thing we know to be true is to try to maintain some semblance of routine regardless of our current circumstance. Meaning if you do a certain activity on the weekend or kids go to bed at a certain time at night, that we try to maintain those routines because it provides us a sense of security, that things are feeling as though they should. I would also tell you that another thing we know, which I'm sure you're aware of, is that the way the media portrays our current health crisis is really meant for adults. And I'm not so sure, to tell you the truth, that adults tuning into it 24/7 is particularly good for our mental health and social, emotional well-being either. But I will tell you, it's not language that's familiar to students. And I think it would be really in your best interest to try to limit and monitor access to the news, because we're all struggling to figure out what this really means for adults. I can only imagine what it feels like for children, and particularly children with a wide range of issues that they're dealing with. So to sum up, I have the privilege of working with both sides of the house, and that's the principals and their teams, and Anne and her team. And we are trying to work very hard to ensure that we can provide the highest quality service we can provide in this time. And I would ask, if you find that your child has a particular concern, you have a concern about how they're reacting, that you reach out to the providers that are in contact with you, and we'll do our utmost to be able to ensure that your child gets what they need. That's what we're all doing together, and I couldn't be prouder of this team and of what we're trying to do. And with that, Anne, I am also going to step off and rejoin our board meeting, if that's okay. And thank you all for allowing me to join you tonight. And thank you for being on the line with us so that we can have these very important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So glad you could join us. So yes, our world has changed radically since March 13th. However, our main goal when it comes to students with disabilities is still the same, and that is to meet students' needs based on the foundational principles and requirements of IDEA. Given this situation of remote learning, we must find new and creative ways to reach and teach our students. As I told EC teachers and service providers last week, right now, we need to worry less about compliance and focus our energy on providing the best services we can in light of this situation. I ask them and I ask you to keep a broad perspective so that you can consider the right balance between what IDEA expects from us in general and how we can apply those principles to a completely new crisis-ridden situation. So one of the key principles of IDEA is FAPE, which stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. FAPE is our core business. FAPE is about a student's instructional experience, where that instruction takes place, what it is that we are teaching, how the student responds, and that the instruction is designed specifically for that individual child. FAPE has not changed. Our kids, students with disabilities, deserve to learn at the highest level in an environment that includes them and that is planned specifically for them. This crisis has been a game changer for everyone, and FAPE now includes the impact of COVID-19. Given this new situation we're in, given the outlines of the overall instructional program for all students in CMS, FAPE is still the same. It still means that within that big context, we must consider each child individually, and that the overall instructional plan is what it is, but we adapt it to meet the needs of students within the outlines of this remote learning environment. The requirement of FAPE is why we asked each EC teacher and service provider to call every family on their caseload and discuss how instruction and service provision needs to be adapted for their child's benefit. That also goes to the idea of individualizing plan. Throughout our department's presentations and messages, you have seen, to the greatest extent possible and based on students' individualized needs, creating an individualized learning plan based on a student's specific needs is a foundational principle of IDEA. Online learning and generalized plans will not work for every one of our students with disabilities. EC teachers and service providers will have to adapt those general plans, and even when they adapt, it may be nearly impossible to effectively serve some students in a remote learning environment. In every service area of EC, we know that the plans and suggestions are great, but they won't work for every child. Our job in the EC department is to support teachers as they adapt plans, as they figure out how to individualize based on a student's specific needs. We do that as district support staff supporting a school staff, not as building level supervisors, but central office supports. This crisis has given us the opportunity to truly engage with parents as partners. As I told the EC staff last week, parents need our support now more than ever. And you need EC teachers and service providers now more than ever. Thanks to COVID-19, your kids are in your homes all day, every day. As unfair as that may seem, you are now in a situation demanding your deep involvement in your child's learning without any training. We know this is intense, and we know that many of you may need suggestions from EC teachers on how to effectively help your child. The only positive way through this situation is through partnership and with empathy and compassion for each other and our students as we jointly attempt to support our children who are learning at home in a less than optimal situation. We are all in overdrive as we recreate public education in the midst of this health crisis. Our plan for delivering special education in this new environment has been developed in alignment with the academics team in CMS. Let's review what we already know about the larger CMS plan and then consider how that builds a foundation for the EC plan. As Dr. Hayes mentioned just a few minutes ago, the EC department has been at the planning table since school closure hit CMS. To be clear, there have been two distinct phases of remote learning. From March 13th until April 1st, the district was under state school closure and was providing supplemental resources and supports for students. During this supplemental phase, the schools could not require students to be engaged in learning, but rather we simply offered up review activities of content that was previously taught. But beginning April 1st through April 6th, the school has launched new learning and is now delivering new content to students through remote learning. EC has been deeply involved in both of these phases. The district couldn't launch the supplemental learning until EC plans were woven in. Likewise, the new learning phase also had to include accommodations, modifications, and direct services for our students. Even every school's master schedule of remote learning has to include time for special education. So, while you might not have heard much about EC at the early press conferences, we were active behind the scenes, creating supplemental learning resources and plans, as well as new learning plans and resources alongside the academics team. When the district launched the overall instructional continuity plan to principals and teachers, EC information was included that provided direction for the gen ed teachers as well as the EC teachers. And as many of you already know, EC teachers should be and are using the district's general education resources as well to build a foundation of planning instruction for their EC students. There should be flow, communication, and collaboration between general education teachers and EC providers. This slide is exactly the same as shared with EC teachers and service providers last week. This slide tells us the length of the school day as determined by CMS. These times listed here, from 2 hours to 3 hours, are the district's expectation for student engagement with learning. That includes direct teacher instruction, like a Zoom, or as well as independent student practice. So while the length of the school day is not an EC department decision, it is very important information for EC teachers and for you. Why? During the regular school day, service time for students with disabilities is based on a full instructional day, which is about 6.5 hours. Now that the district has modified the length of this instructional day for all students down to 2 or 3 hours, IEP service times for students with disabilities must be modified in a similar way, reducing proportionately. So you might be wondering, with a shorter time, how might these special education services be delivered? Well, there are lots of different ways, as many as there are individual student needs and different teaching styles. However, here are a few suggestions that we shared with EC teachers as they began planning for new learning. You can see that some EC teachers may deliver learning through virtual small group lessons. They might meet individually and have a virtual individual lesson. They may join their gen ed teacher and do virtual co-taught instruction. For some students who don't have technology, they may deliver instruction through phone calls, or they may send packet works and assignments with follow-up phone calls. These are just some of the ways that we shared with teachers. We don't have enough time tonight for me to walk you through the guidance and resources provided to the EC staff in each service area. Our webinar with them was at least 50 slides and on top of supporting documentation. We gave guidance and resources for every single service area, including elementary school, middle school, high school. That includes co-teaching, resource room, learning lab, pre-K, extensions, SBS, related services, and speech. We gave teachers an in-depth overview of where they should start and where to find resources. This slide is just to further show you a few snippets from our resource pages for teachers. You can see that they include links to where teachers can get additional information for every service area that I just named. And in addition to guidance by service area, we also provided overall direction to EC service providers, such as they should all be using the script to contact families that I already mentioned. They are all tracking the service time they provide through an EC department created tracker. They were all given direction about progress monitoring on a regular basis. So I just want to reaffirm that we are in unprecedented times. We are already in the second version of a learning plan when we went from supplemental to new learning. We don't know what will happen with this pandemic or how long it will last. There is a very good chance, if not a clear certainty, that we will have to revise our plan again in the coming weeks. If we do, we'll continue to provide updated information to you in a very timely manner. You'll hear more at the end of the session tonight about how to get the latest information from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate your candor and your quick update there that you provided for everybody. My name is Betsy Springer, and I'm the Vice Chair for the Exceptional Children's Parents Advisory Council. And I'm the parent of two. Like many of you, I'm here tonight because I have lots of questions, and we are struggling in our household. Our eldest has cerebral palsy, and he's in 8th grade at J.M. Robinson, where he's in general education with lots of supportive services. One of the things that my husband and I are struggling with is holding down both our full-time jobs from home now, but we're also wearing the hats of helping both of our children try to do learning from home. And we're wondering how we're going to do everything while we do the job that we now really appreciate if we didn't before of our teachers. So I'm going to lead us into the question and answer session. And before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that beforehand we fielded, put up some feelers and got some questions and got some common themes, and then we submitted them to our partners at CMS and asked them to prepare some answers. But that's not all we're going to do tonight. If you look in your webinar, there's a chat section, and we've asked if you have some questions, write your questions in the chat section, and we're going to try to answer as many of those as possible at the end of the call. If we don't get to your question, it's not that we don't want to, it's that we just might run out of time. But we're going to take those questions and we're going to answer them in an FAQ that we're going to publish as well, both on the EC Family Advisory page, but also the CMS is going to put it out there as well, because we want to make sure we have the resources out there to get all the information to you as parents. So that being said, please, let's dive right into it and just keep those questions coming, okay? First question that we're going to talk about here today is this new learning, still considered supplemental? Because we've got a couple of different messages come out, supplemental learning, new learning, and I was wondering, Laura, can we talk a little bit about, what is new learning and the difference between new learning and supplemental?
Yes, thank you, Betsy. I'll be glad to. According to Dr. Matt Hayes, if you heard, CMS has resumed new learning and is providing it through virtual remote instruction. CMS expects all students to engage in new learning and understand that some circumstances may limit a family's ability to do so. Supplemental learning opportunities were provided during the optional phase prior to new learning. Now that new learning is occurring, it is considered required with the understanding that families are facing various individual challenges and remote learning may look different for our families and across the grade band.
Thank you, Laura. That's a really good explanation, and to understand that it might be different for different children at different ages and different grades. But along that same idea, question is this learning, is it optional or is it required? And I think the context we might want to consider that in is the different kinds of communication that we've received and what might work best for our children. For some teachers, they've been super flexible, I can meet whenever. Some teachers are sticking with their group office hours, and for some parents, they might think that, for example, a specific one-on-one Zoom call might be better for a particular subject matter. So I think it comes down to how would a parent address these kinds of concerns, and is it truly optional, or is it required that their children go to all these calls and do all the work that's being assigned out to them?
Okay, I'll be glad to explain it a little bit further. Our district has consistently said that providing specially designed instruction is required when new learning is required. So scheduling of services is at the discretion of the teacher or related service provider, and they have been encouraged to be flexible and work with their families. It is likely that the EC teacher may use similar instructional groupings that they did when they delivered instruction face-to-face. That included small group instruction and possibly one-on-one based on individual student need. However, with the reduction in the length of the school day, changes in service delivery and groupings may happen. Please be mindful that all the students on a teacher or a service provider's caseload must be considered when the teacher finalizes the schedule. And parents, please know that you should work with the teacher and school administrator if needed to come to an agreed upon solution. We really want to collaborate with families to make it work with everybody's individual schedules as much as possible.
I think that's a really good point. The collaboration's still there, even though we can't necessarily meet in person, we're still a team. And I don't know about everybody else out there listening to this call, but we still we found that in our household at least, that trying to keep that team mentality working has been a really important thing. So thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. We're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the idea of a FAPE. In terms of the communications that we've received as parents, some of the questions we've got have centered around the different kinds of communications, learning being supplemental versus required, and how the different kinds of learning, whether or not it's an effort to, quite frankly, not have to comply with FAPE, which I don't think that's what CMS is trying to do. But Stacey, can you possibly shed a little bit more light on how the change in the learning that's being offered now, the difference in the message being given, and how that has been, how our educators are making sure that does comply with FAPE?
So before April 1st, all our students were provided with supplemental learning opportunities, which were optimal, and EC services were not required. Schools began new learning beginning April 1st and April 6th, and at that time, specially designed instruction became required. It's important to remember that CMS has communicated to schools that, as always, FAPE is determined in light of the student, but now, in light of COVID-19, must also be considered. In an effort to build our staff's understanding of how COVID-19 has completely changed how special ed and related services are provided, the EC department has worked tirelessly with schools to communicate the most accurate and current information. We all know this is a crisis, and due to the nature of the crisis, information and guidance has evolved. It's still evolving. Teachers and related service providers have then provided guidance to contact families, discuss IEP services, and determine the most appropriate way to provide services during COVID-19 in order to provide FAPE to ensure that every student with a disability, regardless if learning is called new or required.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So I think the salient message to get out of that is that the learning is, to the best of everyone's ability, is within the guidelines of FAPE.
Right.
And the message is going to keep changing because the situation is dynamic. So the last question I'm going to ask before I punt it to Jeremy has to do with the differences in work that our students have been receiving from their regular classroom teachers and special teachers versus what we've been receiving from our EC department, OT, speech, therapies, things of that nature. Since we've been getting notes that the communication levels have been different, the kinds of services, the work has been different, things of that nature. If a parent thinks that there's a disconnect or they're not getting enough, the same level of work that they should be getting, what should they do? Who should they reach out to? What should their expectations be?
That's a great question. That's a really important question. Prior to April 6th, EC service providers have been contacting families during the supplemental time to check in and provide suggestions. EC teachers are working under the direction of their principal in addition to following the guidance from EC. Therefore, there will be some variation between schools. Our department provided guidance on March 30th and 31st for EC staff and principals to prepare them for new learning. For new learning expectations, which was based on state and federal guidelines. EC teachers and related service providers are now calling families to develop plans for service, which are based on individual student needs. If the EC service providers have not contacted you, you should reach out to your EC teacher and school administrator. Please, families, reach out to your EC teacher, your gen ed teacher, your principal. Those are the best resources for you to start with. And also, I'll go ahead and plug Elaine Jones in here. Our wonderful parent liaison is another resource.
Thanks, Laura. Hey, Jeremy, I think you have some more questions for us, don't you?
I do. I like to give props to Elaine Jones as well. She is incredibly awesome, a great resource for parents. As we talk about, Laura, the reduced school day. So we're crunching the time down for the school day, so there's less time for the kids to get instruction. So we were contacted by our teacher about, Charlie's time and what he's got going on and how we're going to reduce it. So can you help explain sort of how the EC service times are being calculated? How do you come up with the numbers?
It can be a little confusing, I promise it can be, but so we really take our direction from our district and our, Department of Public Instruction for special ed. So in light of COVID-19, CMS will provide instruction remotely on a reduced academic schedule, which is approximately 30% of a typical school day. This means that special education and related services will also be provided on the same reduced schedule. IEP meetings are not required to modify service delivery during COVID-19. Service providers, in collaboration with families, will determine reasonable and appropriate expectations for providing the IEP services at a reduced rate. One of the considerations that service providers may talk to families about is the frequency and duration of sessions to ensure the total amount of service is provided. Now, I'm going to give you 3 different examples. So they may apply to you, they may not, but these are just some ones that we thought might be helpful. But like we said, go back to your EC teacher to get clarification on your child's time. Example number 1, your students' reading comprehension services are set by the IEP at 9 30-minute sessions per reporting period. Based on the reduced schedule, this is 11 minutes per week. Example number 2, your students' co-teaching English language arts services are set by the IEP at 45 30-minute sessions per reporting period. Based on the reduced schedule, this is 56 minutes per week. And example number 3, for example, if a student's reduced speech language therapy weekly total is 8 minutes, then the total service time through May 15th is 48 minutes. The student could receive 6 8-minute sessions, 4 12-minute sessions, or some other agreed upon combination. So that one is a little bit more complicated, but remember, it's all about your child's individual IEP, and you're going to work collaboratively with that EC teacher and the gen ed teacher to figure that out, and related service providers. Let me not forget that group. So once again, it's all about your child's individual IEP.
So that when you reduce that time, it is a little challenging to the parents to have to try to figure that out. And you go from, and then one of the examples, it was like 8 minutes a week. So I know if I'm going to try to get my son to pay attention to a Zoom meeting for 8 minutes in this situation, it's going to be challenging. So a lot of it falls on the parents to help with that, but they do have that support. And I think that's the key message here. While we're trying to make sure that these IEPs are followed the way they're supposed to be followed, and we're reducing the hours, it's a challenge, but thanks for explaining it. That makes a lot of sense. The next question I have is kind of a follow-up to that, because the time that we're receiving for the kid, our children, is so minuscule. All the reading, writing, math, and all that stuff that's left to us. Can we ask for increased time and support? Is that even, with, and again, we're in unprecedented times. We don't know what we're doing. We're kind of figuring it out. Can we ask for more support? How do we work that out?
Well, I'm going to talk about that. That is a really good question, because it is a new day for everybody. It's a very unknown. So we all are in this terrible crisis together, all over. We acknowledge that a heavy lift is now placed on all parents, especially parents of students with disabilities. We're providing remote learning on a reduced school day based on guidance of educational leaders at the federal, state, and local levels. We recognize the amount of service time may not be optimal, and this is not how we will instruct after the COVID-19 crisis has passed. So it's really important. Your partnership with the school is vital. We encourage you to reach out to the school to determine if there is additional support that could possibly be provided with an EC teacher assistant. So that's one of the avenues that you could explore with your school. But I would, once again, go back and talk to your EC teacher to see what additional supports may be available.
But the through line there is that everybody's working together. That's
yes.
There is support. You can ask for support, whether you guys get it or not. You just have to figure it out.
Right.
But like you said, it's an awful time that we're going through. The next question I have, how is compensatory education and ESY, extended school year, being worked out? I was given an ultimatum about services, so how should I go about handling that?
I'm really glad to be able to answer this question, because I know compensatory education and ESY, it's top of mind for everybody right now. And I just want to be able to let everyone know that we did provide a script for our service providers so that they could have a guided conversation around developing a service delivery plan with parents and with related service input. The purpose of that script was really to make a plan for the most appropriate type of instruction for each student. Parents can choose to reject or deny our offer of services, but please be aware that any time that is rejected will not be considered for compensatory education. Students are entitled to compensatory education considerations if the district cannot offer specially designed instruction based on the student's unique needs. Regardless of whether or not a parent accepts or denies our services, ESY, which is extended school year, will be considered for all students who present any ESY factors, which are regression. Will the student show regression or may regress during extended breaks from instruction and cannot relearn the lost skills within a reasonable amount of time? Or would the benefits that a student gains during the regular school year be significantly jeopardized if he or she is not provided with an educational program during extended breaks? Also, if the student is really at a critical window of opportunity of learning, then that is also a factor that needs to be considered for extended school year. Really, the bottom line is this: compensatory and ESY services really will be discussed and determined when COVID-19 has resolved and we are back in school. Until we are back in school, these kinds of conversations and discussions and decisions really cannot be made yet.
So we're kind of in a holding pattern, really, to figure out. I appreciate you explaining it because you made a lot of sense, and I've gone through it with not Charlie, but my youngest son, Liam, for speech. He had an extended school year because he was regressing, and it really helped out. So, and it was great to work with you guys to get it figured out so that we could, help the little guy, help him out with his speech. Well explained, and I think if anyone has any other further questions on that, we'll hit that in the chat. But my next question is around the accommodations for visually impaired students. Will they be given any kind of priority because of they weren't able to receive the services through New Learning? How is that going to work for the visually impaired?
Our team worked very hard to come up with the right kind of solution to provide services for our visually impaired students. And Braille and large print materials were developed and delivered to families this weekend, as a matter of fact, this past weekend. And that was all done through a collaboration with the teachers of the visually impaired. And really, any student that is not able to access services through our New Learning is a priority. That is precisely why we developed the script to guide teachers through conversations with every family about determining the very best way to provide remote education for all of our students. And we absolutely acknowledge that this does require a lot of parental support. Reach out to your child's service providers or your school if you feel like your child is not getting the appropriate support that they need. And if you need any additional support, please contact our parent liaison, Elaine Jones.
There it is again, Elaine Jones, the glue that holds us all together.
Obviously, a lot of this is impacting fourth quarter, and the circumstances have changed. Our children are being faced with the new challenges, and some decisions that were made third quarter might possibly need to be reassessed. And one of the decisions that we've heard multiple times has to do with parents who've requested that their child be held back, and then that decision was denied. Can that decision be reassessed? And if so, what would that process look like?
So promotion retention, that is a really good question with this state that we're in right now. In North Carolina, all promotion and retention decisions are made by the school principal. They do have guidance to help them make that decision. So if a family really has questions about promotion and retention, it does need to go directly to the school principal because they are the only one that can make that decision. Once again, just work with your school on that.
Thank you. But when we're talking about working with our school, we're kind of switch gears for a second here because I think this actually might be on a lot of people's mind, which is how do we do an IEP meeting? I think I might not be the only person who might have had a meeting scheduled in some shape or form in the fourth quarter, and how would we go about getting those meetings held? They can't simply be not held. So what's CMS doing to make sure that we continue to properly evaluate and consider that, next year we're going to come back in? How are we going to do that?
So you're right. We've had lots and lots of questions about having IEP meetings. How do we have them? When do we have them? Where do we have them? Et cetera. So IEP meetings have resumed since new learning has started and will occur as they normally would, except that IEP meetings must occur virtually via phone, Zoom conference, Google Hangout, et cetera. We acknowledge that virtual IEP meetings lack the face-to-face connection and interpersonal exchange that foster collaboration. This is a new experience for us too, dealing with things virtually when we are used to meeting face-to-face. We're learning new ways to collaborate just as you are. If parents are not comfortable having a meeting at this time, the IEP meeting will be scheduled when face-to-face school resumes.
Okay, thanks. So I think the takeaway is if we need to have one, we can. We just have to do it in a, COVID-friendly, no social interaction kind of way. Otherwise, we just have to table it until we can all get back in the room together. On the same kind of scenario, though, and Stacy, I'd like to punt this to you if possible. As I said before, I've got an 8th grader who was looking forward to his transition to high school meeting. And I can't be the only person who has a child who's transitioning. And those are really important meetings because it's just to get people together to discuss your child's needs and how they can go to the next grade. How are those going to be carried out?
So in all honesty and transparency, the details around transition meetings just has not been decided at this point. We know it is a critical time for students and parents, and as soon as we have any more information and final decisions, we will absolutely communicate that out.
Thank you. Okay, so my son will just sit there and earnest waiting, the planner that he is. The last question that we're going to have before I pass it off to Elaine has to do with technology and everything we've heard about our new learning. The plan centers around technology and access to technology and access to working technology. However, we know that that's a picture-perfect scenario. What is CMS doing, or what should a parent do if their child's access is limited, their technology is not working, and it's impacting their ability to complete their assignments, to do their work? What's the plan? What should they be looking at doing? Who should they be contacting? Because obviously CMS doesn't want a child to not be successful because they have technology issues, correct?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this question is really a question that the district as a whole is having to really explore and figure out, because the equity and the inequity of technology at home for students has really been a real issue. But the best way for families to receive any kind of technology support is really to directly contact the child's school. The school has a variety of resources that are available throughout the district to help families get the access that they need. If you have reached out to your school and haven't heard back, you can contact the Learning Community Office for technology support. And if you are still not successful, please again reach out to our favorite parent liaison, Elaine Jones. But schools are equipped with the processes and the procedures for getting technology for students.
I think that's the salient message is you guys have it. We just have to make sure that everyone's got it. And the person who can help is Elaine. So Elaine, we're handing it over to you to talk about support.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elaine Jones, Parent Liaison. We have a variety of supports available for all our families. The CMS EC PAC has a website with many resources of all sorts. If you're looking for instructional resources and information, we invite you to visit the CMS website. You can find packets which may be downloaded. To do that, you go to the CMS website, you click on Families, Remote Learning, and then the resources are available and listed by grade level, pre-K through 12th grade. You can also access specific information for students with disabilities on CMS's website. To do that, you'll go to CMS departments, all departments, EC department, COVID-19. In there, we have a variety of information that is available for you. If you need help or some type of support, you can always call your child's teacher or your school administrators. They should be able to assist you. If you have questions or concerns, you can always call me or email me. And my email address is on the screen, as is my phone number. Now, we'd like to take your questions in the time remaining. You can add questions in the chat.
So we have a couple of questions here that I will read out for the CMS team. I think this one might be for Dr. White to see if we know anything about this. Are plans being made for Camp Surge 2020 and or other supplemental summer learning programs for CMS students with needs?
So I can tell you that conversations have started at every level of the organization to plan for the summertime. At this point, we really don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. We expect and would provide summer learning opportunities as soon as we are able. So if we're able to come back to face-to-face instruction, then we will step right forward into consideration of ESY, compensatory education, camp opportunities, supplemental learning opportunities. We are more ready than you can imagine to get back to face-to-face instruction, whether it's in the summer or not. So yes, but everything's still on hold until we hear what's going to happen with the pandemic.
Thank you. And I will ask, let's see, one or two more. I think this one probably is for Stacy. It says DPI's guidance on remote learning is the following. SEAs, LEAs, and schools must ensure that to the greatest extent possible, each student with a disability can be provided the special education and related services identified in the student's IEP developed under IDEA or a plan developed under Section 504. How does that square with reducing all student service time based on the reduced school day? Those don't seem to align.
So we are actually following guidance from DPI around if the school district reduces the day of instruction for students, then the EC time is also reduced to that same proportion. So we are following the direction and the guidance from the EC division of DPI on that.
Thank you. And I have a question, and then we'll show you how we will answer the other questions for you soon. This one is, my fear is that 2 of my 3 boys who are already behind grade level are possibly falling more behind. One who, because of a heart condition, is almost 2 years behind, will sink when entering 4th grade.
You know, I wish I had I just don't feel like I have a great answer for that, other than I'm concerned about your child, and I'm concerned about how that impacts you all. I know that earlier in our presentation, we told you that principals make decisions about promotion retention. So I don't know if promotion and retention is your specific question or how you can get more help for your child. You can always ask for an IEP team meeting and bring data forward and have the team consider, is your child getting all the services that your child needs to get in order to meet his learning needs. I am really sorry about his situation and how far behind he is. But as you heard us talk earlier tonight, we want to consider every opportunity to support a child, and including your son. Stacy, would you add anything to that?
I would just really add to really rely on your special education provider, the EC teacher, to make sure that between the two of you and her, you're maximizing the time that is spent at home and identifying supplemental activities that he can be doing to keep the growth going, and so that he can at least stay, and all students can stay up on their skills to the greatest extent possible.
I think the bottom line is we're just all in a really bad situation with the pandemic. It's not a good situation for anybody, right?
So if you guys have any unanswered questions, please go to this website, https://bit.ly/feedback for CMS EC. And we will include them in our FAQ on the CMS department website.
And we're also going to go ahead and take the questions that came in through the chat box today, and we'll put those in the FAQ also, so you do not need to re-enter them if you've already chatted in your questions. And we'll leave this page up on the screen so that you can write down this link if needed. Have a great night, everyone, and we will post these slides and the recording on our website within the next couple of days. Thank you.